It's Friday, the 27th of November 2020. Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Headlines, the business news you need in just 5 minutes. I'm Sean Aylmer. Today's headlines: federal and state governments race to get Australians home for Christmas. That's our main story. Plus, business spending plans pick up, raising hopes of job creation in coming months. Telstra fined $50 million for unconscionable conduct in selling to Indigenous communities. And the richest young Australians are announced. And guess which sector most of them come from? The push to get around 30,000 Australians stranded overseas home by the end of the year is on, with an expansion in quarantine facilities, but also a growing number of people wanting to return. The federal and Northern Territory governments are working to expand the Howard Springs quarantine facility to boost the repatriation. South Australia will recommence its hotel quarantine operation next month, and Melbourne will begin taking 1,220 return travellers per week from December 7. The challenge, though, is the surge in people wanting repatriation. There are around 37,000 Australians on the list waiting to return, including more than 8,000 that are considered vulnerable. That's up from 19,000 people wanting to return at the end of August. The main impediment is caps on the number of quarantine places available in each state. Since March, more than 426,000 citizens and permanent residents have returned to Australia. Prime Minister Scott Morrison yesterday said good progress was being made getting people home, though quarantine capacity remains a constraint. The coronavirus news in Australia in recent weeks has been unequivocally good. Today, Victoria is expected to announce the 28th straight day of no new cases of coronavirus. The outbreak in South Australia appears to be under control. The challenge for authorities now is to ensure people remain vigilant and to get people home. In overseas news, the British economy shrank during the COVID-19 pandemic by the most in 300 years, with long-term damage inflicted on growth, jobs and public finances. The economy will be 11% smaller this year than originally forecast. AstraZeneca will conduct new global trials to assess the efficacy of its COVID-19 vaccine, after it emerged that the company wrongly gave some participants lower levels of the vaccine in the just completed Phase 3 trials. And Delta Airlines and Alitalia will launch quarantine-free flights between the US and Italy, the first travel corridor between the two countries since the pandemic began. Locally, businesses have revised up their capital spending plans for this financial year, compared to 3 months ago when Victoria was in lockdown. The biggest pickup has come in the services industry, which reflects expectations that companies will expand in coming months. Overall, the figures show that private business capital spending is forecast to fall by at least 5% this financial year. But that's better than 3 months ago, but worse than expectations before the pandemic. The figures are critical because they demonstrate investment intentions by business, and that means jobs. Bega Cheese will pay $560 million to acquire Lions at dairy and drinks businesses. It includes brands such as Pura, Farmers Union, Dare, Yoplait and Big M Milk. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said he was working through issues with the Chinese government after it was revealed that $1.1 billion worth of coal is stuck on more than 80 ships off Chinese ports. Telstra has been fined $50 million for unconscionable conduct, selling to more than 100 Indigenous Australians, which left them in thousands of dollars of debt. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission said the telco sold 108 Indigenous consumers post-paid mobile plans, even though they didn't understand the product and could not afford it. The Australian Prudential Regulation Authority said banks, insurers and superannuation funds and their boards need to put a more intense focus on cyber security. APRA said it was only a matter of time before a major incident occurred. The federal government's released a proposal outlining major policy changes to Australia's media and content landscape, including obligations for Australian content for streaming services. Qantas boss Alan Joyce has met Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews to discuss moving the airline's headquarters to Melbourne. It would result in 5,000 new jobs in that state and losses in New South Wales. The Australian Financial Review's Young Rich List has been released. It measures the wealth of people under the age of 41, and the top 100 have a combined wealth of almost $40 billion. So how do you get on the list? Get into technology. 56 of the richest 100 young Australians have built their fortunes in the tech sector. And in sad news, James Wolfenson has died. The Australian became head of the World Bank in 1980, the highlight of a stellar career. That's a Fear and Greed business headlines for today. There's more on all of these stories in today's full Fear and Greed podcast, as well as an interview with News Corp executive Siobhan McKenna about her new book. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.